Hello, I'm John Davis here in Alexandria, Virginia, on the outskirts of Washington, D.C., and this discussion will be on the application of historical newspapers as teaching tools applied to the assassination of our 20th president, James A. Garfield. While discussing presidents who have been assassinated, many immediately think of Abraham Lincoln and John F. Kennedy, but few can even recall the other two, Presidents Garfield in 1881 and William McKinley, our 25th president, in 1901. James Abram Garfield took office on March 4, 1881, after receiving the Republican nomination at the 1880 National Convention. Garfield and his running mate, Chester A. Arthur, were a compromise ticket designed to unite a Republican Party for the general election, which had become factionalized between the more liberal half-breeds who desired to continue the civil service reform measures of Rutherford B. and eliminate the patronage system, and the Stalwarts, who believed in machine politics, had pushed to elect Grant for a third term and were represented by Senator Roscoe, Lord Roscoe, Conkling, former Presidents Grant and Arthur. Following a search of the ProQuest historical newspaper database through the Jerry Falwell Library, online resources at Liberty University, I located 4 articles which provide an interesting arc relating to President Garfield's assassination. The first was published in the New York Times on July 3, 1881, the day after Garfield was shot by Charles J. Guiteau, as Garfield walked arm in arm with Secretary of State James Blaine through the Baltimore and Potomac Railroad Depot in Washington, D.C. The second was published in the Baltimore Sun on September 26th, 1 week after the president's death on September 19th of septicemia in Elbert, New Jersey, 2 months after the shooting, describing how he was eulogized across the city of Baltimore and across denominations. The third was a retrospective piece written by the president's last surviving attending physician 24 years after the assassination on July 9th, 1905. The final article told the recollections of what were believed to be the final 2 surviving witnesses of the assassination, who had been boys at the depot, but shared their recollections in a July 3, 1938 article in the Washington Post, a full 57 years after the assassination. With these 4 articles and some basic research into the Garfield presidency, one can not only learn about President Garfield, but gain an interesting perspective on the American political history during the post-Reconstruction era. While many attributed Guiteau's assassination of President Garfield to his failed attempts to obtain any of the federal appointments he had applied for through the Department of State, he wrote a large body of documents and carried a letter on his person stating that his goal was to place Arthur in the presidency, unite a Republican Party under the Stalwarts, and save the Republic. That he had no personal animosity towards Garfield, but that his death was a political necessity, and proclaiming himself a stalwart of the Stalwarts. While the first article looked into this material, subsequent pieces did not. Perhaps to avoid greater dissension. Regardless, part of Guiteau's declaration would come true. Garfield would die 2 months later, making Arthur the 21st president, and the Republican Party would be reunited, but not in the manner Guiteau envisioned in his letter. In the wake of Garfield's death, the half-breeds would pass the Pendleton Civil Service Reform Act, and President Arthur, formerly a leading stalwart, would sign it into law to honor his predecessor's legacy. In the wake of the tragedy of Garfield's death, the Stalwarts would disappear and their leader, Senator Conkling, would fall from favor. Perhaps Arthur's signing the Pendleton Civil Service Reform Act was an even better eulogy than those describing his life of faith and service from the pulpits of Baltimore. But more telling may have been Secretary of War Robert Todd Lincoln's exclamation to the Postmaster General, James, shortly after the shooting. "My God, how many hours of sorrow have I passed in this town?" It was reported that he, perhaps more than any other than Secretary Blaine, felt the blow hardest due to the memory of his father's assassination 16 years previously. He claimed to have discussed his father's assassination with the president just days earlier. The outpouring of grief and avalanche of condolences from north, south, east, and west, as well as the crowned heads of Europe, portray a national and even international sense of loss for the life of a beloved father, husband, child of God, and yes, president, cut short before his full potential had been realized. Thank you.